You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this very podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution, which would be very nice, at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for October 15th, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where we just learned today that some found footage from Donald Trump's Coachella disaster has been recovered. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Hi, Blue Gal.
Hi, Driftglass. Pundits refer to this audio as the hair glitch project. And here we go.
I'm so sorry. I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them.
And we all had a delightful laugh over that, didn't we?
Well, it's to the point where I almost feel sorry for Trump supporters. That kind of thing, that kind of mismanagement of a event.
Yeah.
You know.
No one could have predicted.
No one deserves to be stranded outside at 10:30 at night when you're disabled or elderly.
I agree.
So
I totally agree. And you put yourself in the hands of a man like Trump,
it's going to happen.
You're going to get what you pay for.
Yep.
But today, we'd like to extend a heartfelt shout out and thanks to Mr. Charlie Pierce, who I heard on my very own radio machine this very morning. It being Tuesday, he was on the Stephanie Miller Show. And I do try to tune in, at least on Tuesdays, to hear Charlie Pierce and what he has to say about things. And as she was reading quotes from some very recently former Republicans about how they're now grudgingly supporting Kamala Harris, she came to the name of Charlie Sykes. And Mr. Pierce, bless his heart, said, we don't do that here.
Don't go there.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart. Thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate that. Now, Ms. Miller ignored him, of course, and proceeded to quote Sykes anyway, saying the same thing he has said 100 times before.
This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is not left versus right.
Except the hell it's not. The right is, in fact, the problem. The Republican Party is the problem.
Right. Republicans like Charlie Sykes worked for decades to create a critical mass of voters who would vote Republican no matter what. That was the point.
Mm-hmm.
But folks like Charlie Sykes and other operatives, including Fox News, were so focused on the vote Republican part that they failed to imagine the no matter what part.
Yeah.
And here are the consequences.
I was at work last night. I'm a waitress. I was waiting on a couple, man and woman, presumably husband and wife. I bring them their drinks, and the woman says, I know who you're voting for, in like this sing-songy voice. And I look at her because, like, who have you been talking to? But also, I wasn't even really sure she was talking to me because it was such an odd question. So I just walk away without saying anything. So I bring them their food. I come back to check on them to make sure they like everything. And the woman says, only a month left. I bet you're excited. And once again, I'm like, are you talking to me? Because there's no context here. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. So then they're paying their bill. The man pulled out his credit card to pay the bill. And then he says, hold on, I want to make sure I have cash because I want to tip you in cash. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And the woman says, only a month left until you don't have to pay taxes on tips anymore. And I'm like, okay, now I get what's going on here. So I kind of shrug it off and I'm like, oh, well, to be honest, if Donald Trump wins, I have no confidence that he would ever influence Congress to introduce a bill to eliminate taxes on tips. And she says, oh, don't worry about that. He's going to get rid of all them anyway. And I'm like, the United States House of Representatives? So then she's like, oh yeah, he's going to get rid of all of them. He's going to restructure the entire government. And they haven't actually tipped me yet. So I'm just like, okay. So then she starts to look annoyed with me and she says, you act like you want to pay taxes. And I'm like, I don't mind paying taxes as long as they're equitable and fairly proportionate to my income. And, I actually get something out of them. And I find it really odd to think that I would be coming into work, walking past the kitchen, walking past the chefs, the dishwashers, and they pay taxes and I don't. Like, how do you justify that? And then she says, don't question it. Do not question him. And I just stare at her because I'm like, what did you just say? And then she says, I think he has a plan. Just trust it. And then she gets up and they start to leave. Is this a cult?
That is Kate Swisher on TikTok. And she speaks very fast for, because she's on TikTok. And yes, Kate, it is a cult.
Yeah.
And it has been a cult for a very long time. The reason this is coming as such a shock to so many people, so shocking that they literally refuse to believe it, is the same reason that during Jim Crow, so many people in the North simply refused to believe that things were all that bad for Black citizens in the South.
Yeah.
Because the media refused to turn on the camera and show it.
Right. And they knew America wasn't like this. They know better. That can't be happening not in America, because we live up here in the North where these things don't happen. And that's why there were marches and protests. That's why when police dogs attacked Black men and school children were fire hosed, that was filmed. And those films were moved and sent up to the North to be shown up on television. It was a strategy to shock the conscience of the Northerners and move them to action, get them the fuck off the bench and get them involved in civil rights. And you know what? A lot of good people were injured and died in the process, but it actually worked. Banning segregation and ensuring voter rights became part of the national agenda. You can't outlaw bigotry, of course, and you can't outlaw stupidity, but you can limit the damage that bigots and imbeciles can do. And this is a little bit like what the Harris campaign is up to now, we suspect. The news avoiders, trying to reach the people who want to avoid this conversation altogether. People who do not want to see how ugly things have gotten, so they can go right on pretending that it's not really that bad or it doesn't really affect them. I'm talking to basically the entire reading population of the New York Times, who don't want to believe that it's really that bad. And if the water rises, it certainly won't rise up to their penthouses. And to do so, she's going everywhere and talking to everyone, including, believe it or not, tomorrow night, Bret Baier on Fox News.
This is what you call good trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Getting into good trouble is what she's doing.
She certainly is.
So hold that thought that she's going to go on Fox and talk to Bret Baier. Remember the headlines just a month and a half ago?
Nope. Remember we said last week, we're not going to remember the past. We're not going to remember the past.
Well, you happen to have the script, Drift Glass, and I'm going to read.
Okay, fair enough.
This is from The Hill, always a reliable source, not.
Yeah.
Quote, Harris's press avoidance strategy is un-American, and it's working just fine. And then there's skeevy little Noah Rothman writing in the National Review, getting paid for it, too.
Yep.
Quote, Team Harris's press avoidance strategy is delusional.
She's crazy. Unquote. They're all crazy.
How dare she? Yes. This was all about what a genius Trump was for holding fake press conferences where he blathered grievances for an hour and wouldn't take one question. And the press ran those things live until they realized, oh, he's not going to take any questions. And Harris was a captive of her own campaign. She's being held in hiding, probably for the rest of the campaign. We'll never get to talk to her. And the New York Times was practically trying to execute a citizen's arrest.
Like you said, you broke the law by making an illegal U-turn, and I hereby, as a citizen of the town of Mayberry in the United States of America, arrest you. Hooray!
And force Vice President Harris to respect their authority.
And you will respect my authority.
Now, jump ahead just a few weeks to the current day. From ABC News, quote, Kamala Harris goes on media blitz ahead of election. This just came out of nowhere, Drift Glass.
I know. Just
no planning.
It's like she's running a totally random campaign with no plan or scheme for anything.
Or calendar or understanding of the American electorate's attention span or nothing.
No.
This is from The Guardian, quote, inside the media blitz. 3 days on the campaign trail with Kamala Harris.
By the way, as we're recording this, she is doing a town hall with Charlemagne the God that is being, I believe, live streamed on MSNBC. And then she's going to hurry up quick and go over to Fox News tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.
She'll be on Fox. And in the meantime, she'll be giving stump speeches all over the place.
Yeah. So, ha, 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 ha.
And Drift Glass, what about skeevy little Noah Rothman now that she's actually speaking to the media, right?
He's probably delighted, right? He's thrilled that she's doing that. You right?
Quote, National Review's Noah Rothman reviews VP Harris fiasco with Stephanie Rule. I don't remember any fiasco.
I don't remember that neither. Now how?
That was for the Hugh Hewitt show, though. So, consider the source.
Yeah.
And on hearing that Harris may sit down with Joe Rogan, quote, Noah Rothman, I can't imagine this would be a good move for this candidate.
Yeah. Everything's always wrong and bad.
Yeah. She's just not doing anything right ever.
Democrats never do anything right ever. Now, let's remind ourselves that going on Fox News is not a strategy to win over Fox News viewers.
Right.
Any more than like running Donald Trump's clips at her rallies and calling him a weakling and a coward and unhinged is a strategy to win over all those undecided voters at her rallies.
Right.
There are no undecided voters at political rallies. And Fox News viewers fell down this rabbit hole a long time ago, and they're just not coming back ever.
But I can imagine a time or two on a college campus, somebody saying to someone else in the lunchroom, she's got balls. She went on Fox.
Yeah. Oh, I could totally imagine that secondary knock-on effect to somebody who is marginal, young, and hasn't had their thoughts concretized by 20 years of watching Fox News. Absolutely true.
Right.
But overall, I think the strategy is to drive Donald Trump further over the edge, to drive him more nuts than he is now. They want more all caps screeds on his dying social media site. Just him out there at 4 a.m. screaming his head off into Truth Social. More public promises to arrest his political opponents, because that flies well with everyone. Everyone respects that. And just more openly racist garbage coming out of his mouth. That's all great. The hope is, I think, at some point, the evidence of his madness becomes so loud and so frightening that, like Bull Connor blasting little kids with fire hoses in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, even the legacy media will be forced to stop sane-washing him, and the news avoiders will be unable to avoid it anymore. That it'll just break through by sheer volume of crazy.
Of him going nuts because she's talking to Fox, she's talking to Joe Rogan, she talked to Howard Stern.
Exactly.
She's going deep into his territory.
That's right. And it's making him more nuts than he already is, and that's the point. She's trolling him.
Yeah.
And this is making skeevy Noah Rothman furious. He's very, very unhappy that this is happening. This is from the National Review from today, from this very day. Here's the headline, quote, Trump gives the Harris campaign what it needs. He's very sad now.
You mean by being crazy, Noah? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, by taking the mask all the way off the crazy man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Noah Rothman's been happy to pimp all this time.
Yeah.
It's a sad commentary on the state of intra-Republican political affairs, but merely pledging to uphold the law is described as breaking with Donald Trump.
Well, duh.
Yeah. Yeah, we all know that. Criminal. We all know that. Your dude's a criminal. Your dude's a convicted felon. Your dude's a rapist. Yeah, also rapist. And probably traitor and sold secrets to people who shouldn't have secrets sold to them.
Exactly.
Anyway, continuing on with Mr. Rothman's just incisive analysis of the election. Obviously, we don't want to have the United States military. We're not going to have that be deployed in the United States, said Representative Byron Donalds, of all people, a staunch Republican ally who basically lives in Donald Trump's underwear, on Tuesday. That's been long-standing law in our country since the founding of the Republic. The rebuke was occasioned by former president's cynical musings about the many subversive agents operating in the United States and the need to deploy the armed forces to subdue them. He's talking about you and me, Blue Gal.
He is.
And of course, Adam Schiff. And Keith Olbermann. I don't know how we're going to settle the bunk situation in the camps, but we will. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. This is Trump talking now within the quote. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people. Radical left lunatics. Yeah, there we are. Radical left lunatics. That's us, Blue Gal. Trump told Fox Business host Maria Bartiromo over the weekend, I think it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen. The comments, which veered wildly away from Bartiromo's premise, revealed the extent to which Trump remains fixated on what he called the enemy from within.
The enemy from within, because the only person he's talking to about policy is Stephen Miller.
That's right. And the only thing Stephen Miller's talking about is Nazi shit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's where his head is at. And if you poke him there just enough, he comes out and says it in front of a microphone. And even Moia Badawomo, who I got to assume is just mainlining alcohol at this point, acts stunned that he would say shit like that on a live microphone. Back to Mr. Rothman's incisive, really precise, accurate. Trump's remarks are a godsend to the Harris campaign at a time when it needs all the help it can get. The vice president's campaign and its allies are doing all they can to publicize Trump's remarks, but it is unlikely that Republicans have been privy to that rhetoric. The right.
It was on Fox. Wait a minute.
But the point being, and this is something we've been saying for decades, Blue Gal. The last line of the part I'm quoting is a long article and it's not very good. But the last line is this one. The right long ago learned to compartmentalize the former president's imperious pronouncements. That's a hell of a sentence, isn't it, Blue Gal? Yeah. You mean turn their brain off when it gets
the
really
base
inconvenient.
Is crazy is what you're saying.
Yeah,
yes.
It's a cult. You're right. It's Kate Swisher. It's a cult. And Noah Rothman is really sad that people are starting to notice it's a cult. Not that he's not mad that it is one. He's mad that people are noticing it's one.
And that the Harris campaign needs help. Yes. And so Donald Trump, by being awful, is helping Harris. Yes.
And she's doing the terrible thing, the unforgivable thing of playing Donald Trump's own words out loud on video at her rallies.
Amazing.
Unforgivable. Which I don't think it's ever been done before because no one's ever been this crazy before.
No, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Anyway.
Again, the GOP elite, like Noah Rothman, was so focused on the vote Republican part. This is the thing. Vote Republican no matter what. This was Karl Rove back in the day.
Yep. He got what he wished for, too.
He got what he wished for. A permanent Republican insanity is what it was.
There's our title. Congratulations, Blue Gal.
We knew we'd come up with one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the permanent Republican insanity. But they failed to recognize or realize the consequences of the no matter what part. Because they never imagined a presidential candidate who would say, and we're just going to bring the military out against the radical left.
Right. And, they never imagined a Republican presidential candidate who would talk like Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
That was Rush Limbaugh's job.
That's Rush Limbaugh's, that's his gig. Right.
And we can all pretend that he's over there and not part of us. We're running the party. He's just getting the voters to the polls.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. This is why we've now find Donald Trump lashing out. This is hilarious. Lashing out at Fox News for daring to interview Kamala Harris.
How dare they?
This is, I hate to quote Newsweek because they're just a rag for spam, but this is their headline. Quote, Donald Trump says Kamala Harris's campaign virtually owns Fox News. I'm going to let you guys sit with that for a moment.
Yeah.
Former President Donald Trump has accused Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign of having an outsized influence on Fox News.
Yes, they're the liberals now, Blue Gal.
Yeah, they're liberals now. The network announced on Monday that the vice president agreed to sit for a pre-recorded interview with chief political anchor Bret Baier, who is no prize, by the way.
No, he is absolutely no prize.
His books are just as bad as anything that, what's his name?
Mark Levin.
Mark Levin, has written.
Well, and he's the one who said, I think, if I recall correctly, that we should basically walk back our calling Arizona for Biden.
Even if he won.
If he won, because it makes us look bad.
It makes us look bad. Yeah.
We're
losing our audience.
That's right.
By being ahead of the game. Because you're always supposed to be first. You're always supposed to announce results first.
And you can't
we've hurt ourselves with our viewers by telling them the truth about Arizona. So let's walk it back, even if we're wrong to do it.
Knowing that we're wrong.
Knowing that we're wrong. Yeah. Not a journalist.
Not a journalist. No.
Yep. All right. So he's got Bret Baier scheduled to air on October 16th. In a post on his social media platform, Truth Social, how are they doing? Trump criticized Fox News for what he perceives as disproportionate airtime given to Harris campaign representatives.
Oh, no.
He specifically singled out Ian Sams, Harris's senior advisor, claiming that Sams virtually owns the network. Trump also accused Fox News of featuring numerous Harris radical left Democrat mouthpieces throughout its programming, unquote. He means Pete Buttigieg.
That's a weird thing to call Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah,
a radical left Democrat.
Radical
Mayo
left
Pete.
Democrat mouthpiece is Pete. Mayo Pete is what we call him. Not mayor. Mayo.
Mayo.
Yeah. White, creamy, and and kind of bland, but also very good on Fox.
Yeah, flavorful.
So look, it's working. The good trouble is working. It's getting Trump riled up. And even though the New York Times is still 100% committed to sane washing Trump's madness, it's working.
And as a brief aside, as we know, the Dow hit 43,000 today. How's the True Social stock doing, you suppose, Blue Gal?
I don't know.
Is that rising tide raising all boats, including the crazy boat?
No, I don't know. I literally don't know. Yeah.
At his Pennsylvania town hall, Trump suddenly announced, let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's all just get naked and weird together. No, he didn't say that, but he did say, who the hell wants to hear questions? Certainly not the crazy man. This is from Aaron Rupar, who, does clips of yeoman's work on Twitter and elsewhere. And you've probably seen these clips before, but we're going to read them to you right now. Quote, wow, this was weird. Trump wrapped up his town hall, quote unquote, in Oaks, Pennsylvania after just a few questions. And right after he said he would take a few more questions. More music then played while Trump stood around on stage. Deeply bizarre scenes, unquote. Trump appeared lost, dazed, confused, and just frozen on stage as multiple songs played for 39 minutes, and the crowd just sort of went out the door. They left early. Laura Chapin on social media, quote, if you are a national media news outlet sanitizing Trump's clearly having a mental breakdown on stage tonight, you are as much of a danger to the country as he is, unquote. Amen. And guess what? That is exactly what the New York Times went and did. This is a quote from the New York Times yesterday or today. Quote, Donald J. Trump was about 30 minutes into a town hall meeting Monday night in suburban Philadelphia when a medical emergency in the crowd brought the questions and answers to a halt. Moments later, he tried to get back on track when another medical incident seemed to derail things, this time for good. And so, Mr. Trump, a political candidate known for improvisational departures, made a detour. Rather than try to restart the political program, he seemed to decide in the moment that it would be more enjoyable for all concerned, and it appeared for himself, just listen to music instead and sway back and forth on stage, making the double hand job gesture. Back to the article. Mr. Trump and his staff fired up his campaign playlist, standing on the stage for about half an hour and swaying to songs as his crowd slowly dwindled, unquote. It's the New York Times saying the phrase improvisational departures that makes it art, Luke Al.
Yep, absolutely.
That makes it fucking art. That goes in the museum. Or, as Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal put it, Trump's Pennsylvania town hall ends in a concert. And no, I'm not kidding.
That is the actual headline.
That is the actual headline.
In the Wall Street Journal.
Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Ends in a concert.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was. He has no staff.
Yes. Trump does.
Trump has no staff.
Yeah. Murdoch has plenty of staff.
No event planners.
No.
He has no one, and this is a guy who's supposed to be a hotelier, right?
A billionaire.
A billionaire who has nothing but weddings at his properties all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He has event planners on his payroll, but he doesn't have any on his campaign. And I find it amazing that somebody who is supposed to be famous for having fabulous hotels doesn't understand the value of event planning.
Well, I get the feeling that the Trump campaign has entered that, Berlin is about to collapse. And the Nazis are all fighting over the art treasures and who's looting what. Get the hell out of there. I picture Laura Trump taking all that campaign money and shrink wrapping it onto pallets and shipped to Venezuela.
Absolutely.
This has the gangster term for it is a bust out.
Yep.
Where you're looting the money, you're draining the actual institution dry, and
you're
once it's
outsourcing
empty,
anything forward facing to Charlie Kirk or other people who don't have that experience.
Right.
Who haven't planned a wedding for other people, but who haven't made sure there's adequate bus rides for everybody. Yeah. I do want to add that on Twitter, somebody added to all of this Kristi Noem said time to go to the gravel pit.
Yeah, time to go to the gravel pit.
She was on stage with Trump that whole time.
Oh, yeah. It's creepy as fuck if you watch it. Don't watch it. It's scary. It's Halloween, so maybe watch it for the fear factor. But other than that.
All right. So we've covered a little bit of the Harris campaign's plan for the next 3 weeks and the fact that Trump is unraveling in real time and that most of the legacy media still remains committed to sane washing as much of Trump's pants shitting disasters as possible because they're going to carry him over the finish line in a horse race for ratings.
Damn it.
As long as possible. But what if you're a Trump surrogate? And your situation demands that you have encounters with non-cult media. And you're on camera at the time. What then? Well, pretty clearly the plan is to lie about everything all the time, stare directly at whoever you're talking to, and dare them to contradict you while you continue to lie. You're just going to double down and double down and double down.
Just
and
lie. Just lie.
Yeah.
Like a bulldozer.
Yeah.
A friend of mine in real life, I have known since high school, explained this phenomenon like this, and I'm sure you might have heard it before. It's kayfabe. Kayfabe is an unspoken agreement between wrestlers and their fans to pretend that wrestling events are real. They are, in fact, really athletic, but they're not real contests. A similar phenomena has been taking place recently with the Trump-Vance campaign. The media has been unsuccessful in getting Trump or Vance to break the kayfabe and simply admit that Trump lost the 2020 election.
Yep.
Just lie all the time.
There was a big kayfabe winner this week.
Oh, yeah.
With Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah. Oof.
Pretty remarkable. Huffington Post covered it. Quote, Glenn Youngkin tried to sane wash Donald Trump and a stunned Jake Tapper wasn't having it.
Yeah.
You can wish that he weren't saying that, but that's what he said, the CNN anchor told Virginia's Republican governor. On Monday, CNN's Jake Tapper repeatedly called out Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican, to his face for trying to spin former president and current GOP nominee Donald Trump's latest divisive rhetoric. Tapper asked Youngkin if he supported Trump's comments about using the military against American citizens and people who he described as radical left lunatics. You know, that's my next T-shirt. Radical left lunatic. Youngkin repeatedly tried to claim Trump was referring to undocumented immigrants. Tapper, though, pushed back multiple times, noting how Trump had actually named one of the so-called lunatics as Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat of California. I'm just reading you his quotes, Tapper told Youngkin. Youngkin claimed Tapper was misinterpreting and misrepresenting his thoughts. I'm literally reading his quotes, Tapper said. I'm literally reading his quotes to you, and I played them earlier so you could hear that they were not made up by me. He's literally talking about, quote, radical left lunatics, and then one of those lunatics he mentioned was Congressman Adam Schiff. Now here's what Youngkin said. I don't believe that's what he's saying.
Jesus H. I mean, what are you going to do?
I played the quote and I read it to you. Tapper said at another point, you can wish he weren't saying that, but that's what he said. But, you know, Youngkin can't say Trump misspoke either.
No. Or he lied. He can't.
He was not being clear, or it wasn't a perfect speech. You can't say any of that.
No, because then you're going to have someone start your car for you for the rest of your life.
Right.
Yeah. No. And so, you know, even the pet shop owner in the Dead Parrot sketch.
And we were talking about that.
Yeah.
This is absolutely straight out of Python.
Even the parrot shop owner had to eventually admit that the parrot was dead. He wasn't pining for the fjords. He wasn't taking a nap out of a prolonged, caw. It was dead. It was dead. The parrot was dead. That's it. And then, okay, fine, you got me.
I don't believe that's what he's dying.
Yeah. No, he's just resting. Trump's just resting.
Really, Youngkin, I don't believe that's what he's saying. After he said, I've read you the quotes. I showed you the quotes. He said it.
He said
I showed the audio. I played the video.
I don't believe. Please let me go, Jake Tapper. Please let me get out of here. Yeah, that's what happens when you're a surrogate and you're not just on Newsmax or Fox News.
Right.
You actually have to go on somebody. And Jake Tapper's no fucking prize. Jake Tapper's a huge disappointment and usually a really bad reporter, a really both sides. I acknowledge.
Every once in a while, you push him too hard. And Stephen Miller's done it, and now Glenn Youngkin's done it.
Yeah. Well, it happens when you insult his intelligence.
Yeah.
When you just tell him a bald-faced fucking lie to his face and just expect him to sort of nod and whatever, which is what happened. And Kristen Welker on, I believe it was Meet the Press, is not a lot better. Because when you just lie in her face, she looks like the deer in the headlights. She doesn't know what to do. But at least
go to commercial.
Go to commercial. Yeah. This is Speaker Mike Johnson, who came in a close second in the Kayfabe Awards by staring dead-eyed into the camera on Meet the Press and blandly insisting in that calm Hannibal Lecter serial killer voice of his, quote, "The point is the process works. We had the peaceful transfer of power. We did it in 2020, unquote." Patently untrue, 100% untrue, but you're not going to get him off that. And this "we had the peaceful transfer of power" lie, that's what has become what we call an alpha lie.
Yep.
Not a lie just made up on the fly by some staffer or loudmouth MAGA person that to cover up something real fast. I'm in the corner. I got to make up some bullshit to get this liberal off my back. So, Jews control the weather. Democrats control the weather. Italian space lasers, whatever. This is a lie that's agreed upon down the line by the Republican Party that has now become part of the official historical record of the Republican Party. We did not lose in 2020. The election was rigged. Period. And they're all going to fucking repeat it. Meanwhile, at the other end of the conservative spectrum, and this is where I have to lift my embargo on Mr. David Brooks for a moment.
You wrote a good post about David Brooks this week. Would you like to talk about it, Driftglass?
I agree that I wrote a good post about it, and I would like to talk about it. Maybe you could just quote it to me, and I could just nod my head. But this is, in fact, a podcast, so no one can see me nodding my big bald head. So I'll have to narrate this for you. Mr. David Brooks, in case you didn't know, has been gifted yet another feather-bedding media job. This one is at The Atlantic, where I believe he has the cover article this week.
Yes, he does.
And he's using it to build himself a big old lifeboat, like a life super yacht, big enough to hold millions of people. He is doing this by doing what David Brooks has been doing for 20 years, obliterating and rewriting the past, knowing that no one in the legacy media will ever, ever, ever call him out on it because they benefit from it too. So in his retelling of history, there's a hero. His name is Ronald Reagan. And then yada, 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 a bunch of stuff happened, and then Donald Trump showed up. And that's history. He was boldly on the side of Ronald Reagan because the conditions in Chicago housing were terrible. And he was fresh out of college. And then something happened. He was on Team Red this whole time. He was happily. Then Trump came along and he left. He omits basically his entire writing history.
Yep.
All of it. He talks about Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay in passing. I think the phrase I used was like a bouncer hustling a drunk out of a bar. Mm-hmm. That's how fast he's moving you through 30 fucking years of history, which was his whole writing life. Mm-hmm. He just breezes right past it. Doesn't want to talk about it. And I know why. Because it's fucking embarrassing and makes him look like the liar that he is.
Do you think that's why every once in a while he writes a book about character or humility or
I think
pretend like that's his career instead of all this politics stuff?
I think he wants to be the philosopher king of the right.
Yeah.
He wants to be the elevated thinker. He wants to be the guy who talks about faith and family. And he's, okay, let's start with you dumping your wife and taking up with your research assistant. Mm-hmm. No, we don't want to talk about that, do we? No, we're not going to talk about that. I think really he's just in it. It's almost like there's this social experiment at the New York Times. What happens if we give this hack unlimited resources and let him write whatever the fuck he wants for 20 years and just see what happens? Mm-hmm. And what happens is you end up with David Brooks having a job at Yale and PBS and NPR and now The Atlantic and the New York Times, being very influential and writing garbage, absolute reeking garbage. And it's garbage that he now has to pretend doesn't exist in order to make his conversion to, the Democratic Party still makes me sick, makes me want to gag. But, Trump is just too bad, too awful to side with. So I will reluctantly side with Kamala Harris and support her. But this is not about supporting Kamala Harris. This is about him writing his way out of his own past and pretending it never happened. There's, like I said, he name checks the Tea Party, Newt Gingrich, and Tom DeLay, and the Freedom Caucus. And he omits the fact that he once jogged past a Tea Party group having a picnic next to a black family, and then a riot didn't break out. So he went on Meet the Press saying, I don't know what all this talk is about the Tea Party being bad racists. Everyone got along great. The Tea Party is wonderful. Well, that was useful in 2010. But now it's 2024. He would like to remember things differently. He would like not to remember that he was the guy who said that the Republican Party has cleaned up its record and detoxified itself in 2014. He would like not to remember that it was going to be Rubio, and on and on and on and on.
Right.
And there's this big gaping hole in the middle of his villains, who are now heroes. Guy named George W. Bush isn't referenced at all in his very quick retelling of history. By the way, David Brooks' only college credential that he earned is a baccalaureate in history from the University of Chicago. And he is so much at war with his own history that he can't talk about it and dare not talk about it. And again, he gets away with it because basically the entire legacy media was in on all the bullshit he was running the entire time. So if anybody starts poking holes in his story, it becomes the whole lifeboat sinks and everyone goes down with it. So anyway, I wrote a long post about it. It's called Dave's Not Here. And it's available at driftglass.blogspot.com, and you're welcome to read it to your heart's content rather than have me summarize it awkwardly after the fact.
All right, I have two questions for you, Driftglass.
Sure.
Should Kamala Harris win, go outside, turn around 3 times and spit? Okay, assume I've done that. Do you think that a President Kamala Harris will be able to get through the first 100 days of her administration without David Brooks writing for money, as he always does, that she owes her mandate to, responsible, reasonable Republicans like Liz Cheney, and that she's dividing the country if she tries to govern as a Democrat?
So what are the odds that he'll write such an article?
Within 100 days, the first 100 days.
I got to give it 98% because 100%, perfection is reserved for the almighty, Blue Gal. You got to have a little bit of give in there.
You got to have a little left for Allah. I understand.
And for those of us, and this is where memory becomes important, those of us who remember how Barack Obama was treated by these exact same people.
Oh, yeah.
Who piled all the exact same burdens upon him as this man must unite the country. He is in charge of uniting the country, despite the fact that Republicans will never give him what he wants and will actively sabotage him the entire time. Every time that happens, it's his fault because he didn't lead them enough. He wasn't good enough. And Brooks was in there the whole way. By the time Obama was running for his second term and was running as a politician trying to win, Brooks is rending his garments and saying, I was a sap. I was a fool. I thought he was better than this. I thought he was the second coming, but he's not. He's bad. He's a Chicago gangster. He's just like a Chicago gangster. And he was always bitching that Barack Obama, that the Democrats wouldn't embrace certain policies that Barack Obama was actually trying to pass. He just refused to acknowledge that was happening because living in the center is so much more important than believing anything. Yeah. And I wrote this also to Norm Ornstein earlier this week, the center doesn't believe anything. Yeah. The center just believes in being at a midpoint between two other things. And as long as the right keeps moving further and further into fascism, the center keeps moving further and further to the right. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what the left believes or the right believes or the fascists or anti-fascists, as long as they can cling to the center and
it's not a belief system at all. It's a desire to avoid responsibility and always look cool.
Yeah, because the center's always the place. Yeah, you hang on to the center, you ignore what's actually going on, and you blame both sides. They've been doing this for 20 years. Anyway, no.
So that's my first question. First question. My second question is, how long will it take? And I have another comment, which is, God forbid one of the Democrats on the Supreme Court drops over dead.
Right.
In the first 100 days. How long will it take Mitch McConnell and the Republican senators to say it's too soon? We'll have to wait till the next election before anyone gets appointed to the Supreme Court.
I don't think they're going to be that subtle anymore.
Yeah.
I think they're just going to. I think they're going to say no Democrat will ever be allowed to appoint a Republican
sit on the Supreme Court ever again.
As long as there's a Senate majority of Republicans,
or Or 40 seats, yes.
And
yes.
when Kamala Harris proposed to break the filibuster for Supreme Court nominations, that's when Joe Manchin said, well, I can't support her.
Well, he's not going to be there. They'll
No.
find someone else, though.
Yeah,
They'll find
but the point
else.
being that, this is the same trap they laid for Obama.
Yeah.
If you try to govern, we're going to stop you. If you try to govern without, try to bypass our traps and obstruction, we're going to call you a tyrant.
Right. Right.
And
all your czars mean you're a tyrant. All your executive orders mean you're a tyrant. Right.
And I got to believe that that's why Kamala Harris has not sat down with the New York Times, because it's fuck you. I watched Obama get screwed by you people.
Yep.
Right. And I'm not going to make the same mistake. I will sit down with Charlemagne the God. I will sit down with
Joe
Rogan, Fox News, Howard Stern.
Call her daddy.
Anybody but New York Times. I mean, it's very clear. It's like playing Battleship when you completely encircle the position. Like, what's missing from this equation? Oh, the legacy media is missing.
Yeah,
why do you think that is?
They're dying, and they don't know it yet because
they're dying,
they haven't reported it.
Well, and they created the permission structure for Republicans to be monsters by saying for 30 years, there's no difference between the two sides. You've now absolved anyone on the right from feeling guilty about voting for fascists because we're no worse than the Democrats. Just ask David Brooks.
Right.
Just ask Ross Douthat. Just ask David French. Just ask the entire editorial board of the New York Times for the last 20 years. If both sides are equally bad, then why should I feel bad about voting for one side over another?
Improvisational departures, Driftglass.
Yeah.
That's what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my last question about David Brooks is how long will it take David Brooks to find a John Thune-like savior for the Republican Party?
At the inauguration. He'll be typing it up on his Palm Pilot.
Some bold new Democrat who's going to take over the party and bring it to wholesomeness and sanity.
Well, at the end of his long, shitty article in The Atlantic, he says if you're under 45, you should stay in the Republican Party and try to rebuild it from within. And that's the dream. That's what all of these assholes are hoping for, is that somehow some meteor will strike and they can reclaim, rebuild, and restructure the Republican Party. And the people who are giving them permission to do it are, frankly, credulous liberals.
Yeah.
I mean, Liz Cheney, using her credentials as a verifier of Kamala Harris's viability, can now run as a fucking centrist.
Absolutely.
She can say, I'm the reasonable middle. Look, just ask anybody. I was on stage with them. They applauded me.
And then she betrayed us. What's going to be the betrayal?
Right.
A tax increase? Some sort of, anything. Right.
And then David Brooks can look at all these people who have sided with Democrats as a last resort because there's no place for them in their own party and say, this is the nucleus of the sensible center. Perhaps some sort of no labels party. Perhaps some sort of
Purple Project.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the sad part is when you can see this coming and no one will
miles
listen to
away.
you. And no one will listen to you as it's approaching.
Mark our words.
Mark our words. Anyway, let's go
we'll have
on.
To see. I do want to mention too, as we're making predictions and so forth, note the story about and it's actually I think it's in our news roundup.
Really?
Let's just go right to that. This week, it might be time we started separating the MAGA news from the real news just to keep things straight.
Yeah.
So let me start with this. The Nevada State Senator Carrie Ann Buck tweeting this is what passes for news in the Republican Party. Quote, busted. Kamala couldn't wear her special earrings again, so now they just feed her exactly what to say on a teleprompter in response to random questions from the audience. Come on, ma'am.
That's something they do? They.
It's they. It's Telemundo, and you know who they are.
Well, we know exactly who they are.
Yes, MAGA filth really believes that Harris wears special earrings so that her puppet masters can tell her what to say. But she couldn't wear them somehow during the Univision town hall, so her puppet masters fed her answers via the teleprompter. And this spread like wildfire all over the MAGAsphere. This was a lie promulgated by Sean Hannity and quickly parroted by the meatheads, except not so much. Turns out the teleprompter was in Spanish. But, she can quickly translate from Spanish into English. So
sure.
That's the secret. That's how they get you.
Mm-hmm.
Keith Olbermann replied to Carrie Ann Buck by saying, "Dear moron, the teleprompter was in Spanish for the moderator. Happily, since you can't read, this kind of lie would never stick to you, you horse shit fascist." And I replied, sugarcoating it.
Yeah. But it has to be something like, she has to be under the control of someone else. She has to.
This is Obama all over again. He's a criminal mastermind and at the same time feckless.
He's a feckless pawn of other powers. And he's also jackbooted thug who has his boot on the throat of democracy and is answerable to no one. And when you're MAGA, you can believe two things at the same time. So this is what we would call a beta lie, not an alpha lie that everyone lines up behind and everyone agrees and they're just going to present a solid wall of bullshit. This is a fire and forget lie. Something to be screamed at the top of your lungs until it falls apart and is replaced by a bigger lie. You all know how this works. You probably watched it happening for decades. Another example, this is J.D. Vance on the Sunday shows. Quote, "He was president for 4 years and he didn't go after his political opponents. You know who did go after her political opponents? Kamala Harris," unquote. But as friend of the pod Bob Seska reminds us, quote, "The memory hole is real, folks. Even Sunday show anchors with solid reputations don't remember." Yeah, that's because it's our job, Bob. Yes, Donald ordered Jeff Sessions to appoint a U.S. attorney to investigate Hillary Clinton, which he did. The investigator was John Huber, and he found nothing illegal. Sheesh, unquote.
So here is some actual news. President Joe Biden told Trump to get a life for his continued false claims about the federal government's response to hurricanes Helene and Milton. While delivering a briefing at the White House about the response to Milton so far, Biden said that people who lie about hurricane recovery efforts are, quote, undermining confidence in the rescue and recovery work that's opening and ongoing. A reporter asked if he had spoken to Donald Trump. "Are you kidding me?" said Biden, adding, "Mr. President Trump, former President Trump, get a life, man. Help these people." And if you've seen previews of the new book, War, apparently Joe Biden has a potty mouth in private.
Yes,
he is able to control that at places like press briefings. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. And, he has his church voice and his home voice. And it's shocking that an 80-plus-year-old man from Scranton would have a potty mouth, I suppose.
Yeah, vet from Scranton. Yes.
Here is former President Barack Obama getting into Donald Trump's head like the sole remaining life form on City Alpha 5. While, I must note, at the same time, breaking the legacy media's golden rule by remembering stuff from the before time. This is Barack Obama, quote, "Some think, I remember that economy when he first came as being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. It wasn't something he did. I spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that Republicans had left me," unquote.
Yeah.
And that's as close to potty mouth, fuck you, all of you, you're going to hear from Barack Obama.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah.
In the Florida Soviet Socialist Republic, the Florida Department of Health has threatened to criminally charge local TV stations that air a political ad calling for the repeal of the state's 6-week abortion ban signed by Governor Ron DeSantis. No, I mean, they were talking about pressing criminal charges against TV stations. The state is in trouble with the FCC for that.
Yeah, which is why, for them, Trump's message of just lock up the media, lock up reporters you don't like, lock up everybody.
We're just going to get the military out.
Yeah. And here's some good news. Inflation dropped last month to its lowest point in more than 3 years. Also, that Dow Jones average hit 43,000 for the first time in history this week. Now, that's not the economy. That's the stock market. For people who swear that Donald Trump is better at blah, 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 business, blah, 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 stock market, that's just bullshit. That's just nonsense. I mean, this is the metric they use. And by that metric, Joe Biden is the greatest president of the 20th and 21st century.
If Donald Trump was president with these numbers, he'd be demanding, all of them would be demanding the Nobel Prize in Economics go to Donald Trump.
They'd scrape Lincoln's head off Mount Rushmore and put Trump's up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but it's always the way.
From People magazine. which is about as grocery store register magazine rack bland as it gets. Quote, Donald Trump threatens to deny California federal disaster aid as president if they don't do what he asks.
Perfect. Because that's the magazine that news avoiders stare at.
Yeah, news avoiders who want to talk about Real Housewives rather than what's going on in politics. Yeah,
and then suddenly this is there like, what? What's happening? What? According to Bob Woodward's new book, in June of 2021, 6 months into Joe Biden's term, Donald Trump pressured Mo Brooks to call for a special election to reinstate Trump as president. Mo Brooks refused, leading to their split. Yeah.
I refuse to call a special election for you in March of 2021, Donald.
There is no such thing.
I can't do that. But if you don't, I'll go to trial for rape.
Yeah.
Think of all the money I'm going to lose.
Yeah. Think of how much I'm going to suffer if I'm made to pay for my crimes.
Yeah, that can't happen. Make me president again via Senate.
Magic. A magic special election that you can just make up.
Special election. This week, Trump personally thanked Jill Stein and Cornel West for helping him. Quote, Cornel West, he's one of my favorite candidates. Cornel West, and I like her also. Jill Stein, I like her very much. You know why? She takes 100% from them. She takes 100%, unquote.
Yeah, and saying that out loud is just beautiful. Yeah. This was caught on live stream. Ron DeSantis' henchmen adding debris behind a podium before DeSantis' press conference. Remember that Ron DeSantis spent weeks accusing everyone else on earth of politicizing this disaster while ordering workers to dress up, window dress, add props to his press conference to make it look more disastrous.
From The Guardian, Trump ground game undercut by slow internet that crashes the app.
Yeah. Love this story.
Little detail on this. Trump campaign wants to hit rural voters, but slow internet limits the functionality of the campaign's Sidekick app. You know, this won't be a problem in 4 years when Kamala Harris has high-speed rural Wi-Fi.
Yeah, rural broadband.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Unless Trump gets elected and cancels it.
Yeah. Womp womp. Yeah.
Donald Trump's campaign has limited ability to know whether their ground game operation is reaching target voters in battleground states, as the software being used needs fast internet service to properly track canvassers, according to multiple people familiar with the situation. The Trump campaign this cycle is targeting so-called low-propensity Trump voters, who are often in rural areas as part of their bet that hitting those people who don't typically vote but would cast a vote for Trump if they did vote could make a difference in a close election. But the Trump campaign and the Elon Musk-backed America PAC, which is now doing an outsized portion of the Trump ground game, uses a management app called Campaign Sidekick that struggles in areas with slow internet and means canvassers have to use an offline version. The Campaign Sidekick app effectively forces canvassers who have less than 40 Mbps of internet, sufficient to stream 4K video, to use offline walkbooks, which have no geo-tracking feature and do not always upload after a route is completed, the people said. As a result, the Trump campaign and America PAC then have little way to know whether canvassers are actually knocking on doors or whether they are cheating, for instance, by speed running routes where they literally throw campaign materials at doors as they drive past. I would.
Great part-time job.
Yeah.
Just sprint down the street, flinging garbage at people's houses, at Trump voters' houses, and then run away. I mean, it's one step up from
and these people aren't being paid by Donald Trump. They're being paid by Elon Musk.
Oh, no, this is...
And no one's geo-tracking to know where they are, whether they've thrown all their literature at doors and they're now in a bar somewhere.
But, hey, don't worry. They're running a top-notch campaign. You know how I know that?
They're bankrupting the RNC, Driftbug. What did you say about Laura Trump? She's cellophane wrapping $100 bills.
Shrink wrapping pallets of money to be shipped to Venezuela for, in case things go wrong. Donald Trump's going to want to be able to land at an airport that has a stack of cash for him to enjoy.
And you called it a bust out?
Yeah, a bust out. It's a term from gangsterhood. They used it in The Sopranos. It's where you take over a legitimate business and you basically bleed it dry. You bankrupt it. You sell off all its assets just for money, and then it goes bankrupt, and you move on. It's a loot and scoot approach. You go in, you gut the place of everything of value, and you leave. And that's what they're doing.
Laura Trump. Yeah.
And there's that line from, what was it? Sneakers.
Yeah.
At the very end of the movie when they're having some revenge, and one of the things that they do with their sneaky box that can break in any code is the RNC is broke. The Republican Party is broke.
Yeah, right.
And suddenly all these good causes are getting lots of money. The Republican Party is broke. But that's what really they're doing. I mean, they put a bunch of grifters.
Moved the finance headquarters of the Republican National Committee from Washington, D.C. to Florida.
To where? Where, Blue Gal?
To Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
This is just outside Mar-a-Lago.
The Republican Party is just one giant fucking ATM machine for the Trump organization. And they're going to take it for every nickel they fucking can. They already have. I mean, Steve Bannon's in jail right now because he did exactly that. And they're just a bunch of fucking criminals. They don't know how to not be criminals.
Yeah.
And one of the criminals, the head of the crime family, is visibly losing his mind in public on stage every day. And yet the election is too close to call. Yep. Speaking of which, the local news today is just my local relating to you of how things are here 1,000 miles away from North Carolina and Florida. Because I keep my eye on local MAGA D-bags. And if you follow them here, you will see, for example, this is sort of the evolution of a lie. The first part of the lie that you see on local social media is a picture of a devastated home and a gutted highway. You've lost everything. That's the top half of the picture, and it says $750 is all you get. Bottom half of the picture is a bunch of brown people, probably immigrants of some kind, standing behind a barbed wire fence, and it says like $3,500 or $5,000, or whatever the hell it is. And that's, of course, the bigots in the Republican Party, who we have plenty of them here, believing that FEMA lie, which everybody was passing around just a few days ago, which has since been debunked every which way you can imagine, they're still dug into it. They can't give it up. So some helpful local person comes along and informs them, well, that's just not actually true. It's $750 because for everybody, because you have nothing for immediate use. There's no ATM, there's no cash, there's no nothing. You need water, you need food, you need baby formula. Here's a card that'll get you those things right now, and we'll take care of the rest in a little while. But one does not wipe out the other, and all the money's not going to a bunch of immigrants. And the reply from someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, but is a loyal Trump MAG, is, that's what you think. Good luck getting that money. All of it's going to the illegals, and everyone knows it. That's what happens when you try to tell a Trump Republican something they don't want to hear. They make up a secondary lie to justify their belief in the first lie and ignore the fact that they've been humiliated by buying the first lie in the first place. They can't be reached. They can't be reasoned with. They can't be bargained with. The only thing they can be is defeated. And that's our job 3 weeks from now, just to push these people the fuck out of power and then worry about keeping them out of power for the rest of our lives.
So feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
I got busy doing the double hand job dance over here. I'm working on my Trump Halloween costume. My Halloween costume is me dressed in a blue suit with a long red tie, standing on the sidewalk, swaying back and forth with the double hand job dance.
Yeah, to Ave Maria.
To whatever voices are in my head. If that doesn't scare the local kids, I don't know what will. Now, don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is, in fact, our job, and we love doing it. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month or more if you can at patreon.com/ProLeftPod. And another thing you could do for us that doesn't cost a nickel is sharing our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen as well. And thank you so very much for doing that.
We had over 15,000 downloads last week.
I know. I don't believe it.
Well, that's multiple times, more than 2 times what we usually have. And
What can I
so
say?
if we're catching on, first of all, thank you for sharing the show.
Yeah.
And we were stunned.
Oh, we're also getting some hate mail and some MAGA commenters.
Oh, yeah. And MAGA comments on YouTube, which improve our algorithm.
Please, go ahead.
Hey, Driftless, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, in the Trump campaign civil war between Chris LaSavita and Corey Lewandowski, the Internet Kitties are rooting for injuries.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying and the fellow and the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25. GGBG Productions.